Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show live, and we are glad you're with us. I think we're going to have a good show tonight, the title of which is Millennials. Who cares? Plus some real news. We'll see what happens when we get into it. As you can tell from the background, I am joined with a full crew in the Hilltop Studios tonight. Say hello to...
I'm Mr. Fire.
And...
Uncle Bocce.
And Uncle Bocce's going to have to yell because he moved his microphone. Now we got
Sorry about that. I heard the echo.
Hello.
Hey, Chingawa. So I told you we were going to have a good show tonight. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Before we dive into it, I would like to remind you, please, that we are all over the social media as Doc Owen Show, DocOwenShow. The best thing to do if you're a social media-ite would be to follow Doc Owen Show on Twitter so that you can get instantaneous notice when we go live, as well as after the fact. You know, we may have something to say or something to retweet. Twitter seems to be a pretty good medium. President Donald J. Trump uses it, so you might be up to the minute on some of the latest news and the real words. So we also have a blog called DocOwenShow.com, spelled exactly the same way. Primary contributor at the present time is Uncle Bocce, who also uses it as his history catalog of the research that he does. And so it is actually has quite a bit of value. You can go to the DocOwenShow.com blog, sign up for our intermittent, when we feel like it's important, mail list. Not something that we inundate people with, but we'd love to have you on the mailing list, as well as listen to the show in podcast format, because it's posted out at DocOwenShow.com immediately upon completion. So what else? Oh, we got free apps, capital FREE apps for both iPhone and Android, where you can listen to the show. You can listen to it as a podcast. You can tell your friends about the Doc Owen Show app. It costs you nothing to download, and it gives you access to our library of shows in the past. So we feel like you don't get much lower price than free. Therefore, it's a really good value in terms of what we deliver. So even if we charge for it, it would be a good value. Yeah. I'd like for everybody to know, if you're not aware, before we dive into our, the standard show, I got to get this off of my brain before I forget about it. I thought today was the day that we had finally turned the corner to push back the damage done 30 some odd years ago by Randy Newman with his song about short people. I thought today was the day we were pushing back the tide, because today is National Shrimp Day.
Okay.
And then I logged in to find out that wasn't the shrimp they were talking about. I was so disappointed. I thought I had finally, helped them turn the corner on the anti-short people movement.
All you saw was instead shrimp.
All I saw was food. Shrimp this, shrimp that.
On a stick.
All sorts of quotes from Bubba Gump.
Soup.
Jumbo shrimp.
So anyway,
hash.
we'll just have to hold on a little longer till we can turn back the short people tide put in place by Randy Newman. We always begin our show, the true part of the show, in a real traditional fashion. We sort of regroup and then head down the show path. And that starts off with Ms. Surefire giving us an inspirational quote. Uncle Bocce has something to say about this day in history at some point back, something significant, or two perhaps. And then I close out the three-way round with something about leadership. So, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from passiton.com. So we've had a lot of quotes from them lately.
Yep.
And tonight's quote comes from a gentleman that I had never heard of, and I guess maybe a lot of people haven't. His name was Nathaniel Brandon.
Brandon.
Yep.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, he was a Canadian-American psychotherapist and writer whose main works were about self-esteem, which I thought was pretty interesting.
It is.
And his quote is, "We must become what we wish to teach."
Yes, absolutely.
Lead by example is another one I could kind of thought of.
You know, folks, you may or may not believe this, but Ima and myself do not at all share our thoughts or our quotes or what we come up with from week to week.
No, we're too busy during the day talking about other stuff.
It just doesn't happen. But it is uncanny to me the number of times that we select almost exact subject matter and direction for our quotations.
You know what? God finally answered my prayers, and osmosis has finally taken place for me.
That means I'm going to be smarter.
That's not what I meant.
Oh.
You're the doctor.
Okay.
Okay.
Uncle Bocce,
Yes.
bail the audience out.
Okay, audience, I'm here. Am I still?
Yep,
Yeah, I'm good.
You're
I'm
loud
good.
and clear.
Okay. On this day in 1775, the Second Continental Congress assembles. And they assembled in Ticonderoga Falls, which is on Lake Champlain, upstate New York. Two prominent men about that in that area, well, in that battle. That
You know how Lake Champlain got its name, right?
You drank too much
nope.
of it?
Yeah.
Somebody had too much to drink.
Okay. Okay, the two gentlemen were Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold.
Ooh.
Did you know that both of them were accused of treason?
Ethan Allen?
Yeah, I thought Ethan Allen was a good guy, but he actually tried to. He wanted to reattach Vermont to the Brits.
It was so hard on him he had
But
to
he
go
didn't
into
get
the
convicted.
furniture business.
I was
He
going to
didn't
say,
get-
that's
yeah.
all he did. was
He
make
did
furniture.
not. No, he did not get convicted. And also on this day, the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in Utah.
Thanks to the Chinese.
Yeah, thanks to the Chinese. So the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific railroads were finally in. We had a
So the Second Continental Congress convened at the same time that the railroad across the country was
no.
tied
This
together.
is 1869. The railroad.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
I
Did I
missed
not
that
say
part.
that? Okay, maybe I didn't say it. Maybe I jumped right into it. But yeah, yeah. Good.
Okay, you got it?
I got it.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, good job. Second Continental Congress and completion of the railroad. I'm quoting tonight from this book a friend of mine gave me called God Bless America, Powers and Reflections for Our Country. And the first one is in a section having to do with leadership, as a matter of fact. Surprisingly enough, it's about, in particular, respect. And it's a quote, I can't really read it, Titus 2:7. In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. Does that sound familiar to your
Yes,
quote?
it sure
That
does.
sounds very familiar.
You know, if you pay attention, a lot of things that motivational speakers say have roots in the Bible.
Yep, absolutely.
And the second one, Uncle Bocce kind of glazed over last week, and I ran into it. And it has to do. It's in the section called community,
Okay.
and it's going to take up approximately 20 to 25 minutes. Not really, but it's a little thing called the Gettysburg Address.
Oh yeah.
And we referenced it last week as we were talking about Abraham Lincoln, right?
Right.
And I think everyone in the audience will recognize the title of the Gettysburg Address. They totally remember the opening phrase, 7 years ago, because it took us until I don't know how old I was to figure out how many a score was, so I could do the math and know how long ago he was talking about, right? We remember that, but that's about, unfortunately, that's as far as we go.
Right.
And yet, it's not that difficult. I'm going to read the entire thing for you right now.
Yay!
70 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
That's right.
Boom.
Yep. It was a great speech.
We should all know those words. Every one of them, not just the first few. Because it's indicative of what the challenge is today, is getting back to these roots.
So much.
Okay. So, having said that, Uncle Bocce, we're now through with Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
And we're moving on to, you can call me Ray. We're moving on to who?
Andrew Johnson.
Andrew the Johnson.
Yeah, the vice president who became president.
As a result of
Lincoln's
the early
assassination.
departure of Mr. Lincoln. Right.
What a tragedy.
Yes.
Okay, so Andrew Johnson never attended school. He didn't go to school. He was apprenticed as a tailor, and he worked in several frontier towns, as a tailor. And then he settled in Greenville, Tennessee. He served as president from 1865 until 1869. Okay,
Yep. The remainder of Lincoln's
the
tour.
remainder of Lincoln's term.
Never ran. Go ahead.
He was, of course, Abraham Lincoln's vice president.
Right.
He came to power, again, after Lincoln was assassinated. Johnson holds the dubious distinction of being the first president to be impeached.
Really?
Yes. This man could not and would not get along with the Congress. Congress was controlled by, at that time, I think, by Republicans.
You know why? I know why that a lot of people don't know, and it's probably not in the history books.
Well, go ahead, say it.
Well, you said it.
Oh.
He apprenticed as a tailor.
Oh. Okay.
Have you ever been in those of you in the audience that have been in a men's clothing store, and you have a pair of pants, usually a pair of pants, that needs to be altered because they come with what we call an open bottom, so they have to be, the bottoms have to be cut to fit, and you either get cuff or no cuff, right?
Right.
And that's when the tailor comes out from the back and he marks your pants.
Right.
Don't try to tell him how you want them. He's going to do them like he wants to do them. I can't tell you. I mean, the tailors run the clothing store. I want a 1.5-inch cuff. I don't do cuffs. But I want a cuff. I'm not doing a cuff. Dude, I just spent $400 for this suit. I want cuffs. No. So I can understand how Mr. Johnson didn't get along with anybody.
Very good.
His training was as a tailor.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Oh man, I'm glad we figured that out. Go ahead.
Okay. Johnson was a Democrat from Tennessee, and he resisted the Republican-dominated Congress. Their plan for Reconstruction. Remember last week we said that Abraham Lincoln was in favor of a forgiving Reconstruction?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, guess what?
Didn't happen.
Right. It didn't. So he clashed.
Could be part of the reason he was shot.
Yeah, it was. Well, not because of the Reconstruction, but just the fact that they won the war. That's why John Wilkes Booth, he was an avid slave person or avid, supporter of the South. Okay, so Johnson fired the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, who was appointed by Lincoln, which led to the impeachment process. He was impeached. However, he in the Senate did not convict him by one vote.
Nice.
Yeah, by one vote. Okay? He was known as Sir Veto
Yeah.
because he vetoed everything that Congress had.
Excuse me.
And he was also called the Tennessee Tailor. That's obvious. Yeah.
My point exactly.
And another nickname that nobody knows anything about, and I have no idea where it came from, is called Daddy of the Baby. Whatever that means.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ah.
He was a
That
very
sounds like a
staunch-
research topic for the audience.
Yeah.
We need to know what that
Absolutely.
was.
Absolutely.
And by the way, the one guy that voted for him in the Senate that kept him from being impeached, his pants he got right.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. So he was a staunch Democrat, which begs the question, why on earth would a great man like President Lincoln choose a Democrat for his vice president? And we're going to talk about that. That's an issue. We're going to talk about that next week.
You mean the issue that he did it, or the reasons that he did it?
Both.
Reconciliation, the same reason that he wanted a reconciled view of the South after the war.
Yeah. Well, we're going to look at that even more deeply, though, next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Am I close?
He was, you're in the ballpark there.
Okay.
56 years and 3 months. That was his age. He was 5'8", 178 pounds. Nobody really, well, actually, he's considered by most people, by most historians, that he was the least religious president who has ever served. They can't identify his religious philosophy or any of that. None of it. He just wasn't. They claimed that he was a Christian, but
Couldn't prove it.
don't tell him.
Right.
Okay, so he was born on December 29th, 1808 in Raleigh, North Carolina, and he died on July 31st, 1875 in Carter County, Tennessee, which is where Greenville is.
Yeah.
And guess where he was buried? In the Andrew Johnson National Cemetery in Greenville, Tennessee. Along with his
Well, that
his
was
wife.
convenient for him.
Yeah. So he served for like 3 years and 10 months. $25,000, which today's equivalent is $360,000. He held some other office.
You keep saying that. Are you trying to tell us our current presidents have taken a cut in pay?
Yes, they have.
I mean, okay.
I think they get paid too much. Should be
But they get a lot of perks that they didn't used to get.
exactly. Okay, so he was the town alderman and also mayor of Greenville. He was in the state legislature's lower house. He was in the state senate for a while. And then 1843 to 1853, he served in the U.S. House of Representatives as a Democrat.
So he worked his way up.
Yeah. His wife's name was Eliza McCarty. Nothing really
Not
important.
Johnson?
Well, Eliza McCarty Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she had the last name. Okay, a little bit about the campaign, and this again is going to be part of next week. But this is the reason why Lincoln chose him, because Lincoln was uncertain about his reelection. He was very uncertain about it, so he wanted to balance the ticket. He convinced the Republican delegates to drop Hannibal Hamlin. I'm glad he did, though. Who wants a vice president named Hannibal? He was Maine, in favor of Andrew Johnson, who was the most prominent war Democrat. So he did this for, I don't know, an altruistic reason, but we'll see next week why that was a big mistake.
Well, nothing's really changed. I mean, we know
No.
today that they
Yeah.
select them based on their
Exactly. This
popularity
is the
of
point.
a certain section of the country.
That's one of the points I do want to make.
Where the president, whoever the presidential candidate is, may feel that they're weak or the weakest, and they need that part of the country.
Yeah.
That's who they reach out to as a VP.
And at some point in time, what I want to do
Good
is
or
I want to see each president who selected for that purpose and what the results were. There are some bad results from it.
Oh well, the more you dive into this, done correctly, and the audience should feel the same way. Done correctly, the more questions you should have.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's.
Exactly.
I mean, we started this journey based on the pushback to Trump. Has it occurred, president after president, and if so, to what extent? And we hit on that a little bit.
That's right.
But it also raises as many questions as it does answers.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Exactly. Okay, he pretty much kept the same cabinet, except with a few exceptions. Particularly William Seward. You know, we know him for
He's the Navy.
Alaska. Yeah.
He was Secretary of Navy, wasn't
No, he was the Secretary of State. Seward.
he? Okay.
Yeah, Navy was Gideon Wells.
At that time.
I don't know. Okay. The only state that came into the Union during his presidency was Nebraska. He had really no court appointments except for one judge to United States Court of Claims. Okay? That's the only judgeship he had. And with that, I will end this week's
Mark your place.
brief. And I guess I could tell you who I am. You can reach me at Uncle Bachi, UNCLEBACI, at DocOwenShow.com. I'm waiting to hear from you.
Thank
Next
you,
week,
Uncle
we'll dive into some of the things that Johnson did or didn't do, and we'll look more closely at that. So come back next
I
week.
can assure you his lack of the ability to get along is his training as a tailor. I guarantee it.
You're probably right.
I can just feel it in my bones. Having grown up in that industry, I can guarantee it. So, thanks, Uncle Bachi.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Good job. They're always interesting. We're getting pretty close to the time that I remember firsthand. Okay, so one of the there were two titles to the show: Millennials. ... Who cares? ? And then plus some real news. So since Millennials is going to attract the majority of the attention and conversation, I want to read you some headlines from what I consider to be real news, and that is coming out of the alternate media, a name well known to us. If you've never read Andrew Breitbart's book, you need to do that, because it will give you some tremendous insight into how far ahead of the curve he actually was in terms of recognizing the power of social media and the power of the independent media, i.e., one of the things he always said was every one of us is a reporter. It's right there in your hand. You've got a camera. You've got a recording device. You have everything you need right there in your hand. You are a reporter. If you see something, grab and the younger the audience, the younger the person is, the more likely they are to have that instant reaction, right? I mean, the rest of us are looking around for a camera and fumbling for film. So this is from Breitbart News. And it's just an example. I'm not putting Breitbart out there as the WFA on alternate media, although they are a good one. They're not the only one. There are others. This is just an example of what is out there. Top story, all stormy all the time. CNN's May ratings already collapsing by 20+%. Okay? This one is titled, You Heard This Right. Dennis Miller roasts the left. If you're going to be the cool kids, you cannot be hysterical every day. Dennis Miller's a
Sounds
Canadian.
like
If
Dennis
you're not
Miller.
familiar, yep. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of thought. You got to think about what Miller says.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You do.
It's not slapstick comedy at all. Real threats. IDF, or the Israeli Defense Force, I think is what it means. IDF. Iranian forces fired rockets at Israel. Retaliation. Almost all, in quotes, Iranian sites in Syria are destroyed.
Yay.
Like you or not, yet Netanyahu does not pussyfoot around.
Nope.
Washington's private pension plan is disgusting. I don't know what that is, but I can imagine. The poll, 53% believe Mueller politically motivated. And Vice President Pence is quoted as saying, time to wrap it up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The President and First Lady welcomed the Americans home from North Korea.
That was
And
awesome.
I must be perfectly honest with the audience. When they announced that 3 hostages had been released, I didn't even know they had 3 hostages.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know you.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
For somebody that pays attention to the news, I feel guilty that I didn't know they were there. I don't know how long they've been there.
Yeah, they've been there a while.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So anyway, 2.2 million fewer people on food stamps under Donald Trump.
Hallelujah.
Yep. And that's it. Those are just the headlines.
Yeah, that was just right.
So
exactly.
if you've not heard about any of those stories, you are listening to very much the wrong news. That's all I would put out there.
Correct.
If you've not heard about those stories or that angle on those stories, you need to change the channel.
Absolutely.
You probably need to unplug the television
Probably.
and get into the internet, sign up for mailing lists. There are some wonderful blogs out there. Paul Craig Roberts that I mention all the time. The Common Sense Show with David Hodges. There's just all sorts of places to go. And once you go down that path, you'll hear from others that are in the same genre.
Exactly.
So
Good job.
that was the reason I wanted to bring out real news. In other words, there are things out there. And yes, I know you've heard about the bombs for the Iranian bombs and the Israeli bombs.
But not everybody has.
Well, okay, maybe they haven't. They should have. But who fired first still seems to be in question.
Okay.
You know, who started this escalation? It's one of those who knows. Okay, let's talk about millennials. The question I posed was millennials. Who cares? And it was stated sort of like, who cares, right? But I'm here to tell you, I care.
I care.
All 3 of us
Sure.
care.
Yeah, we do.
And the
care a lot.
majority of the listeners to this show care.
That's right.
However, similar to former President Andrew Johnson that grew up as a tailor and couldn't get along with anybody. And that's kind of what Dennis Miller was saying right here, as it so happens in his comedy show. What was it he said? Hold on, I'll get it to you. If you're going to be the cool kids, you cannot be hysterical every day.
There you go.
I happen to know from personal experience, and so does Uncle Bocce and Ima, there are a lot of very intelligent, very solid thinking young people in the world.
Absolutely.
The problem is they don't get enough of a voice, and it's not very exciting. I know when I was the age of our target audience, 16 to 26, I was a whole lot more interested in having fun than I was worrying about retirement.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
That's right.
I mean, and I was a whole lot more interested in pushing the limits of that fun. I get it. Well, I mean, I grew up in the 60s. So it was wild and woolly. It was wide open. I mean, these young people today think that they have no boundaries, and I got news for you. You're a bunch of wimps. But that's okay. You're doing the best you can with what you were given to play with. When the millennials, unfortunately, a small, I like to think really and truly, a small minority of this particular generation is giving the entire generation a bad name. It's not necessarily their fault. It's not. I don't think it's their fault at all. They are the result of their upbringing and their education system.
Yes.
I bring up upbringing because this generation probably has had the majority of this generation has probably had very little influence of the Word of God in their education. Isn't that pretty true?
I bet that's true.
I mean, it's been wiped out for
Right.
a good 30 years
Right.
out of public schools.
Along with a lot of other stuff.
Well, but
Yeah,
start there.
right.
Yes, along with a lot of other stuff, but it starts there. Okay. So it's really not their if they don't have this kind of a foundation, if they don't salute the flag and repeat the start and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and listen to a prayer every morning, what else can we expect? You know they're not going to be made to do that on their way out the door when they're leaving home, and they're not going to get it at school. So what else should we expect from this group? Then it's not really a lack of it's a lack of respect, but there's a reason for it. They've never been taught that honor comes with the respect for themselves comes from respect for others, right? Not all of them. I'm not making allness statements.
That's good.
I'm just saying that how do we give them a break? I mean, this is a show of questions, if you ask me. And let me give you a personal example. Can I give a personal example?
Sure.
Sure.
I'm a college professor. On the one side, I teach a college course. I have approximately 25 students every semester. Okay? There is always one, sometimes two, but guaranteed one, that is absolutely expecting to pass my course without lifting a finger. And then when called on it, because I don't let them, they act like they're going to get me fired. They do everything they can to get me fired. If they would have put half the effort that they were of taking it out on me for not giving them a ribbon, if they'd have put forth half that effort in the course, they'd have done just fine. And they'd have learned something along the way.
Right.
This is a real personal example. When I came out of the Naval Academy, I had just about had it with being told what to do. I was now 22 years old, and I was paying a lot of money to go to a private institution, not liberal, very conservative, as a matter of fact, Texas University, not the Texas, but a university in Texas, Christian school. And I was free, it was my money, and I was going to school. One of the first things I ran into was the fact that they objected to me walking on campus without socks. I was wearing shoes without socks with my shorts. I just left the Naval Academy. You're not going to tell me what to wear. Sorry. Besides that, I was a fashionista. I was fourth generation in the clothing business. The other thing is I had an English professor who required that we all use 2-hole notebook paper. No. He said, that's standard size. I said, no, it's not. Yes, it is. It's my requirement, so it's my standard. Well, it is not standard size. Standard size is 8.5 by 11, the size of a typing page, and that is 3-hole notebook paper. I'm not changing everything I do to 2-hole notebook paper. Well, you're going to flunk my course. No, I'm not. I argued with him. I wrote the state universities of 48 states, their head of their English department, to get the answer to my question of what was standard size notebook paper. I spent all this time, effort, and energy getting answers from all these schools. Most of them said we don't have a standard, but if we did, it's likely to be 3-hole and it's the same size as blah, 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 blah. I took all this research into this professor and I said, see, I told you. He said, that's great. Now put it on a 2-hole notebook page and turn it in as a piece of work. I flunked the course. because I wouldn't follow directions.
Wow.
Unfortunately, some of my students have me as a professor, and I'm bound and determined that they're going to learn some of the valuable lessons in life that I learned.
Right.
And that is, these are the requirements of the course. Whether
Right.
any other professor requires it or not, I don't care. They're stated at the very beginning. It's no surprise. Every student is held to the same standards. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling this to a young audience, I hope, so that you'll understand the value of some of the things you don't like. Yes, ma'am.
But I know your requirements, and they are only to help the student, not just like a little
course.
quirk about some kind of paper. It's to make them a better person by the time they leave that course.
Well, it's to make them
Yes.
it's
I
to
can
make
attest to that.
it's to make them thank you. It's to make them a better contributor
Mm-hmm.
as they graduate. Because they're about to have a master's in cybersecurity. That's going to bring them up a notch and put them in a different realm out there in the business world of far greater responsibility. And they need to know not just the technical aspects of it, but they need to know a lot of other things that go along with that, so that they can explain the technical aspect to those who are less technical, or present their case to upper management, who is certainly less technical than a cybersecurity expert. So you're exactly right. I mean, it's a bigger picture sort of a thing. And that means learning various and sundry pieces of the pie that go into moving up in management as you get in corporate America. Uncle Bocce's been through that. You were on the technical side when recruited, and then got off into management and business analysis sort of work,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You know, of figuring out what really is the problem and how can I help solve it.
Right.
And that's what. So to the young, I keep saying this. I mean, the reason I asked the question in the show was at the beginning of the show, and the title of the show is because I do care. But you got to care too.
Yeah.
And if you go back to, this is year 5. You go back to year 1 of my shows, before Ima and Uncle Bocce joined the team, and you'll hear the exact same message. If you don't care, I don't care. And so, but you're part of caring. Just, you expect me to listen to what you have to say as a youngster. Because I know when I was your age, I complained and I complained and I complained that these old folks would not listen. And I knew it was because my hair was too long and they just wouldn't respect me. So I'm sure most of you think we're not listening because of your tattoos or whatever else little foible you've decided your generation's going to be proud of.
Those man buns. Oh. Yeah.
Well, my favorite about that was I asked somebody at work one day why he was wearing it, and he didn't have an answer. Because everybody else is.
Everybody else is, right.
I figured that's the answer I was going to get.
Yeah.
But whatever is stylish is not that important. So that's only on the surface. What really is important is, what's behind that. What thought process is behind that.
Right.
Right?
It's like there's got to be a reason why you're doing something, not just because, well, everybody's doing it,
Yeah, and if that is your reason, then you need to put more thought into it.
There's no value
before you do it.
Yeah, there's no value there.
Right. Right. And I mean, I'm more than willing to listen, but you better bring a logical argument to me. You better bring a logical conversation, not an emotional conversation. You will lose the day with your superiors if your argument is emotional.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You can interject a lot of emotion into your logical presentation. You can interject a lot of feeling, a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of support, a lot of emotion into a very logical presentation.
But it's kind of like don't make it personal either. Make it more
If,
about
if whatever
the
if
job.
that's what it means, if that's what
Yeah.
that take it, and that's one of the things that we preach in school. Never, ever, ever write in the first person.
That's exactly what I was just thinking of. An academic paper that
Yeah.
said don't use I.
you well, not just I, we.
Well, sure.
The
but I'm saying
singular,
a
the
lot of
plural.
people tend to use I,
Of course
I.
they do. And some of that is I have learned, some of that is the fault of the professor or of the course that presents the problem in a personal way. Do you know what I'm saying? We do a lot of role playing in college nowadays. And they present the role to you, and you are to assume this role and then create a report, et cetera, et cetera. So they lead you down the path of an I-type response. When in fact, in academia, if you think about it, academia is always in the third person. You are an observer. And it's always in the past tense because academics can't write about the present tense. There's no way to do research on it. The academics have to wait until a body of information has been brought about. Then they can analyze it and figure out what went on. That's the thought. That's
Good
the way
advice.
it works. That's the way it works. And that's done in the past tense as a third person observer. So sometimes I'm telling you, courses are presented, and so if you're going to get good at it, you're going to figure out how to back away from it. And even though you were told to do this research or run this lab experiment, blah blah blah, when you're writing the paper, back off of it and view the work that was done as in the past tense, which it is, it was done, and make believe it was done by somebody else.
Yeah.
And report on what your alter ego did during the lab experiment. And it's not that hard to do. Maybe it is. But if you think
Depends on
about
who the person is.
well, if you, it's not natural, let's put it that way. It's not a natural way of thinking or talking.
Right.
You have to train yourself.
Yeah, because
Practice.
a lot of people now are used to, texting or twittering or
It's all
personal
real time.
email, and it's like I.
Well, it's just little. It's like
And I'm doing it now.
It's like little fireflies. It's like the June fireflies that are out there. You see them, they're gone. You see them, they're gone. You see them, they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then they light up somewhere else. Well, that's the challenge that's the challenge that the current generation has. And don't put it back on me. Sorry, don't tell me I'm not up with the times, because I'm totally up with the times.
Yes,
I mean,
he is.
I'm not gonna embrace self-driving cars.
Not when they killed somebody.
Well, I don't see any reason for it other than the fact that you've been spoon-fed and you're a lazy person. Drive your car. Pay attention. If you don't want to drive the car, I understand. Can't blame you. Take the bus. Find another way. Don't endanger my life because you're lazy.
Right. Right.
Now, if they perfect it, that's fine. I'm good with that. But for now, no thanks. So, my generation, our group, has to work very hard to overcome a lack of training that we feel that we don't feel. We know is important for the young people of today, and they've not had it. They've not been afforded those opportunities. It's not been ingrained in them. It's not second nature like it is to us. So we got to be really careful when it comes to listening to them, how we talk to them, all sorts of things, and not to pamper them, but to make sure that we're heard and understood, and to make sure that we hear and understand them.
That's right.
And look past their inability to present it to us in a fashion that we expect.
Okay.
Follow me?
I follow you.
And if we're really fond of them, whoever the individual is, either in the workplace or personal experience or whatever, part of our job is to say, you might be more successful if you'd learn to do blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And that'll happen all your life. I was 50 years old and thought I was King Kong salesman, and I had some young punk sales manager that took me aside and basically said that to me, and he was right. I know you're really good, Mr. Owen, and I know you've been very successful all your life, but you've never done this, and if you'll listen to me, I can help you be successful at this. If you don't, you won't. Ooh. Oh. I was like, who you talking to?
Tough words.
You must be kidding me. He wasn't. And he was right. And I had a lot of respect for this young man as a result. Still do. So, but it's there's lessons to be, there's lessons coming. There's a challenge of communicating going both ways. Mm-hmm. So who cares about millennials? I do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I may not sound like it all the time. I may get extremely aggravated. I've earned the right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of millennials who know me sitting in the audience going, whoa, as if I'm not aggravating. I know that I am. I'm fully aware of that. I'm a very difficult person to be around at times. I get it.
I plead the fifth.
No, I get it. I mean, I understand. But I like to think it's all done for the betterment of whatever it is that I'm preaching or harping or carping about. I like to think I come at it with the sincerity of raising us all up. Mm-hmm. I may not be going about it exactly correct at the moment when I get fired up.
Yeah.
So, we got to be conscious. Mm-hmm. That's all. Mm-hmm. Make
Absolutely.
sense?
Oh, yeah. Makes
Yeah.
complete sense.
Okay, so what am I missing? What am I missing? Think about it. What am I missing? What?
Excuse us, folks. Oh, we have
I can't hear the audience.
I had a cough drop that
Oh.
was like, wow, I had a zinger in
You
it.
must have had one of the green ones.
And it was like a zinger, like, wow.
You took one of the greenies.
That's like,
Yeah. We're having allergies around here for the past couple of weeks. San Antonio is very, very prone to have all sorts of nasty stuff in the air when something comes in from the north or from the south.
And from the west, too.
Yep,
We
the
get that
dust comes in
dust.
from the west.
even from Mexico.
Mexico's
when they
the south.
Fire something, I don't know, every year or
Yeah.
something happens. Yeah.
Well, they burn.
Yeah.
They have they burn something. The brush, I guess. I don't know.
I guess I'm pretty fortunate then because I have no allergies to anything.
Wow.
I've been tested.
You're lucky.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
it's in
am.
Man.
Maybe it's in our hair.
Well, it depends on which one I'm wearing.
Well, if he has no allergies, that's the only
No hair.
that's the only thing I can see.
yeah, right?
It would be apparent. Well, what is what I'm saying? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does make sense.
Because I don't. These are not pre-recorded notes. These are just thoughts off the top of my head.
Exactly.
And obviously, the millennial thing was bugging me because they get a bad rap. But only 1 out of 25 students every semester is basically the personification of all the bad stuff you hear about millennials. Well, that's only 1 out of 25.
Right.
So I'm gonna hold an entire generation hostage because of one screwball.
That's right.
No, I'm going to try not to.
That's right.
Am I going to back off on that screwball? Nope.
No, of course not.
No.
So, did we have them growing up, Bachi?
Did we have what?
Screwball.
Screwballs?
I mean, did we have nutcakes that were part of our generation?
Oh, you better believe it.
Really?
I know. I did in my generation.
My generation was the anti-Vietnam generation.
Yeah, I
Right.
went through that too. I went through the same generation.
Mine was the big earrings and the big hair generation.
Ah, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. What?
Focus.
What? What'd you say? Vogue?
Vogue.
You had that one had to be on camera for it to make any sense. Speaking of that, turn around and show everybody your new bow. Way cool.
Fiesta.
She always wears a bow in her hair for the evening show.
Yes.
And this one has a real fiesta touch to it. It's got the little brightly colored,
Ribbons.
ribbons.
Well, he got me two. So I got this
So
one
now she
and I
can
got a little
swap-
blue one.
Swap
with
them out.
Stones on it.
I bought one for Uncle Bachi, but he didn't have any place to wear it.
We could glue it to his head.
No, you can't.
Ouchie. Ouchie. So, but, and there were people who took the Vietnam protest way outside the limits.
They did.
Way outside the limits.
Absolutely, they did.
Not a lot different from what we're seeing today in terms of protests. Other than so, we don't have enough time left. But so, is there an analogy? Is there a relevance between the Vietnam protest and the Black Lives Matter protest?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they're two completely different things.
Okay.
Okay. Almost time.
So I asked the question too late.
Yeah, well, I just do. I think that they're completely different motivations, different reasons,
Okay.
and different time.
Well, I think different time doesn't impact me nearly as much as different motivation, different reason.
Okay.
I mean, the Vietnam was eventually proven to be somewhat of an unjust war, as the stuff going on in the Middle East may well wind up going down that same path.
Yeah.
All right. So.
But we know that. We know that now. But back in the '60s, those people didn't know that it was an unjust war. They were just against war.
Well, I get that, but because it was an unjust war, it didn't rally the troops like World War II did.
Exactly. Yes.
It actually was the second of ongoing skirmishes. We've not had world wars because we have skirmishes.
Yeah.
The Korean War was the first,
Yeah.
which we are just now getting over.
Exactly. Imagine that. Wow. I'm glad we are.
60-something years.
I think we've got next week's show just cutting the bag if we want to dive into the Vietnam War in comparisons to today, the level of violence.
Good topic.
Yeah.
It's been sected and dissected. So look at the title of the show, and the answer is we do. Uncle
We do.
Bachi,
Yeah.
I'm a surefire,
do.
and myself,
We love y'all.
we care. We're not going to tell you we've got all the answers. I will tell you we've got some really good questions for you
That's right.
that you need to figure out the answers to. And I promise you, anytime approached, I'll show you the due respect. Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.